Welcome back, everyone. This is Betska, the Guru Coach, together with Raj Vashisht, and we are Mindful Leadership Beyond Borders. Our delightful guest today is Mr. Geoff Keller, and we are discussing amphibians. And he has this 5-acre piece of land that he's turned into, it's called the Frog Ranch, and he has one pond for frogs where no fish are there because sometimes the fish will eat frogs. And then he has another pond just for his fish. And he was telling us that the bluegill fish get very excited. Geoff is a vegan, and so when he's coming down the hill from his house down to the pond where the fish are, they get all excited because he's bringing them extra firm tofu. So it just shows you that fish also love extra firm tofu. I love it.
They
It's
do
so great.
indeed.
Good story. So listen, one of the things we haven't discussed yet, and it's important, is what percentage of amphibians are being threatened? Give us some detail here.
Yes, well, for frogs, it's about 40% have really gone through mass extinction, basically, and just
Mm,
within our lifetime. But with regard to salamander species, it's even worse. It's upwards of 60% are now threatened with extinction. And
yeah.
as we mentioned on the other
Part one.
portion of this bit, yeah, part one, there's multiple reasons for sure, but it's serious. I mean, to have this many species um, be decimated so quickly in a human lifetime,
Mm,
that definitely does not bode well.
no. So why is it important to maintain a healthy biodiversity of the planet? What give us give our viewers a reason to want to do everything they can to create a healthy biodiversity.
Well, I can start off with a really blatant one. We need pollinators.
Ha.
And a huge percentage of our food crop is would cease to exist if we didn't have pollinators pollinating the
Mm,
flowers of our of the food we eat. And every time you start subtracting out um, a life form, you set the potential for some very negative outcomes. Another spin off of this, monocultures. Do you know this term, monoculture?
I've
What
heard
I'm
of it. What
referring
is that
to,
again? Yeah.
well, that refers to the agricultural business. And
Okay.
what the trend is to have genetically identical, like identical wheat crops, genetically identical corn, identically genetic
Um,
soybeans. And these large corporations have these endless square miles of the genetically identical um, crops that are be growing. And that is counter to if that is those native crops would be genetically varied. But when you start lumping them all into one genetic type, it sets a stage for pathogens. And if a
okay.
pathogen came along that happened to be able to decimate the particular monoculture that has been in place, you could wind up destroying an entire continent's worth of food for the human population. And when
Mm,
you have a genetic diversity or biodiversity, that is like insurance that that's going to be much harder because if there's genetic variability, in the food crops, it makes it much harder for a single pathogen to wipe out an entire food product.
right
And that,
on.
so that sets a stage too. And I think that Chief Seattle is quoted as saying um, something to the effect of, we did not create, we did not weave the web of life, but we are a strand, merely a strand of the web. And whatever we do affects our outcome ultimately. So you couldn't hardly say it. I mean, I missed the quote slightly, but you get
Hmm.
the intent. If you
Yeah.
start either destroying or micromanaging the web, you are really playing with dynamite, and the potential for unintended consequences is pretty risky, I think.
Hmm. Wow.
So it's this the pollinators are definitely on the receiving end of some serious outcomes, amphibian species, because everything's interrelated. You take
Hmm.
out another example is there's a bird called an American robin. It's abundant throughout the entire North American continent.
Hmm.
And oh, I'm sorry, correction, wood thrush. They're related to robins. It's a wood
Okay.
thrush though. And
Right.
wood thrush are native to eastern North America. And in the New England states, uh, their numbers have been declining. And here is why. It's the acid rain that's generated from the big metropolitan cities of Chicago and Hammond, Indiana, and Gary, Indiana, and perhaps Cleveland. I don't know. They're um, sending up all the whatever it is they're sending up into the atmosphere that's generating acid rain. The acid rain falls on New England. Well, what happens in New England is that the acid rain is killing off the worms that the wood thrush use as food.
Oh.
And so there has been a serious decline in wood thrush populations in northeastern United States because the acid rain has taken out one of their chief food supplies. So we're all connected with everything else.
Hmm.
Uh, we're all a strand in the web of life. And when you start tearing apart the strands, you run the risk of some very negative outcomes.
Got it. Yeah. So we are, as humans, we are interfering with
At
nature
warp
when we
speed,
should just,
we are
at warp speed.
interfering at
Yeah.
warp speed.
Hmm.
I actually worry for the future generations. I mean, future, the ones that are born today. I do
Hmm.
believe that by the time they are our age, they will have seen and experienced and witnessed things that we can't possibly imagine.
Yeah. Yeah. So we need to wake up, right? We need to wake up.
Yes. And amazingly, Chief Seattle seemed to be awake uh, long before ever our politicians were awake. They're not even
Hmm.
awake yet. Chief
Yeah.
Seattle had vision of the importance of the food web. But I think with regard to the vast majority of our politicians, their foresight extends only as far as the earnings for their next quarterly profits. That's
Mm.
my humble opinion.
Mm.
And so,
Okay.
hooray for Chief Seattle.
So yeah, thank you, Chief Seattle. And it would be clearly it would be better if our governments would come back to the table and discuss climate change, for example,
Absolutely.
and discuss the protection of the wetlands and marshes and the habitats of all these beautiful creatures that create such a delightful planet that we have come to know. So, Geoff, what can the average homeowner do to help preserve the biodiversity of their planet where their home is
Uh-huh.
surrounded by a sprawling residential area as opposed
Yes.
to your property, which is rural, forested? I mean, you're blessed. Thank God you're there for those amphibians. But, lots of people live in skyscraper skyscrapers and what can the average person do?
Good point. Um, and yes, having a frog ranch in a residential area doesn't work because
Mm,
a lot of the frogs, once they get out of their pond, they would want to get in the lawns and things, and it's not a good combination to
mm.
have lawnmowers and frogs in the same spot.
No. Oh,
So
yeah.
not a good idea.
Hmm.
However, if you are in a residential area, I think going with the pollinators is the way to go because just about anyone, I mean, I suppose even if you were in a high rise, you might be able to have a patio that could have some wildflowers that would attract bees or butterflies. And
Yep.
if you actually have a yard, a backyard and a front yard, you could easily have a pollinator garden. And
Mm,
even that is going to make a difference. The more people that do that, the better off. In
yeah.
fact, that is becoming common practice in my part of the country. Are you aware of the monarch butterflies?
Yes, I
Uh,
love those. They like milkweed.
yes, they do. And amazingly, people around here are on board with that. Um,
Mm,
they are planting milkweed because that's the larva. That milkweed is the host plant for their larva.
mm,
And
cool.
there are stores right down in the little tourist town that I live in where they have a little section of milkweed planted right outside their
Excellent.
pond. And not only that, I have swamp milkweed. I have intentionally planted around, that's another species that the monarchs can utilize is swamp milkweed. And I
Mm-hmm.
have swamp milkweed going right down on my property. And I also have included a rare wetland plant called not butterfly weed. Oh, I've spaced out the name, but there's an endangered species of state endangered called the Baltimore checker spot, and it needs this particular wetland plant as its only host plant for its larva. And so
Wow.
I also
Wow.
have that planted down by. So I'm trying to help the pollinators out as much as I can too. And
Yeah.
indeed, the number of pollinators has skyrocketed since I've been the steward of this property.
Uh-huh.
I know I took off on a tangent there from your original question, but the average person, I think, if they want to do the best that they possibly can for the biodiversity, I think it would be pollinator gardens.
Yeah, and I mean, we don't have a huge garden, not certainly not like you, but we definitely do plant um, certain plants that attract the bees and the butterflies and so on. But if someone lives in an apartment and they have a little balcony, instead of planting petunias or whatever, plant uh, plants that are very effective at attracting the pollinators, right?
That
I
would be the
mean,
plan. That would be a
yeah.
good idea. I've never really
Hmm.
looked into that to know how practical it is. If you're on
Hmm.
a 37th floor of a high rise, that I just don't know. That might be a little too much to ask, but
But why
a lot of
not?
people,
Why not? You
yeah,
know?
maybe it would work. I
So
don't know.
in the high-rise building, can we attract birds also in the 37, 40 floor?
Sure. Why not? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, even like balconies can be quite large or they can be relatively small, but
Hmm.
even if every person put one plant that attracts pollinators, wow, that would make a huge difference. The bees and the butterflies and I'm there and we can't do it here, but I know a little further south where people are, or even in Eastern Canada, you can put out uh, different pieces of fruit that will attract pollinators. Like oranges, for example. The pollinators love to eat fresh oranges from in a peel. There's so many things that we can do, and I am so delighted you've come here today, Geoff, to discuss this very important topic. And the fact that our viewers, that every single one of them now knows that they can do something instead of relying on governments. And I mean, you didn't
Right.
rely on governments, you just decided you were going to do what you're doing. And every little bit helps to bring back love.
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
bring back love to the planet. So, what final comment, if any, do you have for our viewers here, Geoff?
Well, it hasn't been said before. Well, I guess the overarching thing is we just have to develop an awareness of the importance of maintaining a healthy biodiversity. it is
Right.
not negotiable.
Ah,
Um,
yes.
it just has to be done, and the more this is postponed, and the more our biodiversity declines, the more difficult is going to be,
Mhm.
and potentially disastrous it's going to be for us
Yes.
if
For
we
the
do not.
children. Yeah.
Oh
Hmm.
yeah, yeah. I could see that our generation, may be able to squeak by fairly well, uh,
Hmm.
but the ones that are being born today, this it's just going to have to be um,
Yes. Got
accounted
it.
for. Maintaining biodiversity is just going to have to be accounted for, period.
Hmm. Okay, folks. So the message is clear. Maintaining a healthy biodiversity is non-negotiable. So let's all put our thinking hats on and see what we can do to add more love, create better spaces for these beautiful creatures to survive. Thank you for being here with us today, Geoff. You're awesome. And Raj is always awesome. So
Mhm. There
You
you
are
go.
super awesome.
we're all super awesome. All right. Thank you
Right.
so much. Right. Bye for now.
Okay. Thank you.